YouTube live. Yeah.
Okay. Live stream, it started.
Warm welcome to our 65th book review session, jointly organized by IRTT Readers Forum and American Tamil Media. So today's book is The Other Einstein, written by Mary Benedict. This book is going to be reviewed by Madam Dr. Nirmala Khanna from US, who is a family friend of our Velumani Bro from 1992 batch. This particular book is already available in our D-Block library and presented by our author. So we'll take this opportunity to thank our madam for her kind support. With this thanking note, I'll request her daughter, Harati, to give an introduction to this forum. Hi, Harati.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Harati. I would like to introduce my mother, Dr. Nirmala Khanna. She was born in Coimbatore and grew up in Salem and went to Coimbatore Medical College. Afterwards, she came to the USA in 1994. She did her MD in internal medicine here and is now working in Lincoln Hospital in New York. Our family, me, my older sister, my dad, and my mom, have been living in New York for 29 years. I'm glad that my mother is doing the review of this book because we both have a shared love of reading and we enjoy going to the library often to look at books. And this is one of my favorite books. It's a great book, very eye-opening and a great experience to read. And I hope you all enjoy this book review on The Other Einstein. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harati. So before the start, just a reminder, so we need to time box this session due to other appointments. So the session will be for 1 hour, 30 minutes to 30 to 40 minutes with the review and 20 to 30 minutes with the Q&A and other discussions. Okay. With this, we can hand over to Madam. Madam, you can start the review.
Vanakkam. Good evening, good morning, good evening to everyone because everybody is all around the world. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank IRTT Alumni Association Reading Forum. I've heard so much about this from Velmani, who is our very good friend, one of the nicest person that we know. And I really appreciate all the work you are doing. It's a great organization. And I saw how organized this whole team is, the way you tested yesterday and the way the communications are. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank my daughters, Harthi and my older daughter, Shruti, who introduced me to this book. They read this book first, and then they asked me and they insisted that I read this book. And I'm grateful for that because it is a wonderful book and I'm glad I'm sharing it with you all. I want ஒரு பேக்ரவுண்ட் கொடுத்துட்றேன் இந்த ஸ்டோரி பற்றி. ஏன்னா இந்த ஸ்டோரி வந்து it is centered in Europe. So கொஞ்சம் names எல்லாம் different-ஆ இருக்கும், சிட்டியோட names எல்லாம் different-ஆ இருக்கும். So I will just introduce the background and the names and the characters. And then I will go into the book and I will basically tell the story because within 30 minutes I have to finish the story. And I will read some interesting passages and then we can discuss the book. Thanks for introducing Mr. Elamaran. And like he said, this book is called The Other Einstein. And it's written by Mary Benedict, who is a lawyer in US. Book was published in the year 2016. It is a story of the wife of the famous scientist Albert Einstein. The time period of the story is from 1896 to 1919, the turn of the century. The most important year in the story is 1905, when the important paper on the theory of relativity was published by Albert Einstein. So the characters, important characters in this is basically a novel which is based on true events. So it's part fiction. The details are all fiction, but many of the events, most of the events are true. So the characters are Albert Einstein, whose nickname is Johnny, which is given by his wife. And Mileva Marik, that's his wife. The nickname for her given by Albert is Dolly, so they call each other as Dolly and Johnny. Helen, who is the best friend of Mileva. Mileva's mother and father, whom she calls Papa and Mama. And Mileva's and Albert Einstein's close friends, who are Mr. Grossman and Mr. Bess, and their professor, Mr. Weber. And Einstein and Mileva's sons, first son Hans and second son Tete. And a very important character here, their daughter, whose name is Liesel. So if we can remember these names, we can go into the novel now. Mr. Elamaran, Velmani, is there anything else I should change? In the presentation, everything okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Can I continue?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So the story starts in the year of 1896, when Mileva gets admitted into the university in Zurich, Switzerland, to study physics. She was the first woman who was admitted there to study physics. The 1900s society in Europe did not acknowledge women in universities, particularly in the field of science. Most of the women got married after they finished school. So it was unusual to see women in universities. So because Mileva was so bright and intelligent, she got admitted into this university. And the first scene opens with her father dropping her off in the hostel in college, where she's going to stay. Many of our college students who are listening to this will relate to this scene. It reminded me of the day my dad dropped me off at Coimbatore Medical College. So here it goes. Stepping off the train after a jostling 2-day journey from our home in Croatia, Papa and I were a bit wobbly. My father was helping me to carry all the heavier bags. He rushed to my side and trying to relieve me of all the heavy bags. Papa, I can do it, I insisted as I tried to wriggle my hand out from his hand. You have bags of your own to carry. I can carry my own. Mileva, please let me help. I can handle another bag more easily than you. Placing my bag down, I tried to extricate my hand from his. Papa, I have to be able to do this alone. I'm going to be living in Zurich by myself after all. Here I have to stop and let you all know that Mileva has a disability. She was born with a disability in her leg. So she has uneven legs and she walks with a limp. She kind of drags one of her legs. So this disability has been a big part of her life, and her father and mother are very protective of her because she has a limp, and they think that she cannot do everything on her own. So we exited the station and stepped into the busy evening streets of the Zurich. This is the first time she sees electrical lights in Zurich, and she is spellbound. I wrapped my shawl around me for the warmth in the cool evening air. The night before I left, Mama gifted me with this shawl, tears welling in the corners of her eyes, but never falling. The cab driver asked me, cab means it's a horse carriage. He asked me, are you here to see the sights? No, said Papa. And a little proudly he said, we are here to register my daughter in the university. University? He was surprised. Then they head to the hostel and they meet the hostel warden, whose name is Mrs. Engelbert. She says, may I introduce you to our other young boarders, the lady boarders. Other lady boarders? I was very surprised. And she gets introduced to her other students who are staying in the hostel. Their names are Ruzika, Milana, and Helen. Mrs. Engelbert gestured first to the girl called Ruzika. She is from Sabak and she's studying political science. Turning next to the girl with the darkest hair and heaviest brow, she said, this is Miss Botash. She left Khrushchevik behind and she's studying psychology in the Polytechnic. And then finally, this is Helen, who has traveled all the way from Vienna for her history degree. I didn't know what to say. Fellow university students from Eastern Europe, just like me, this was a huge surprise to me. And I was so excited to be in the company of these bright women. The next chapter is on October 20th, 1896, in Zurich, Switzerland, which is the first day of her class in the university. I'm going to read a little passage here because this is a very important chapter. I smoothed the wrinkles on my freshly pressed white blouse, flattened my bow encircling my collar. Squaring my shoulders and willing myself to be just a little taller than I was, I placed my hand on the heavy brass handle to the classroom. Turn the knob and push the door open, I told myself. You can do this. Crossing this threshold is nothing new. You have passed over the supposedly insurmountable divide between male and female in countless classrooms before, and you always succeeded. Still, I hesitated. I knew all too well that while the first step is the hardest, the second is not much easier. I remembered my papa. Be bold, he would say, in my own native Serbian language. In your heart beats the blood of your ancestors, who will do anything to get their due. Go get your due, Mileva, go get your due. I remembered my papa. I could never disappoint him. I twisted the knob and swung the door wide open. 6 faces stared back at me. 5 students and 1 professor. Shock and some disdain registered in their faces. They have not prepared to see a woman in their class. A determination to master physics and mathematics brought me to this college. Not a desire to make friends or to please others, so I ignored them. I reminded myself of the simple fact as I steeled myself to face the instructor. I waited for the professor to speak. You are? He asked, as if he was not expecting me. I am Miss Mileva Marik, sir, I said. Very slowly, the professor, whose name was Weber, consulted his class list. Of course, he knew precisely who I was, since he served as the head of the physics and mathematics program, and I had to petition him directly to enter the first year of this 4-year program, and he approved my petition. Of course, he knew me. The consultation of the class list was a blatant and calculating move, telegraphing his opinion about me. Oh, you are Miss Marik from Serbia, aren't you? Yes, sir. You may take your seat. We have already begun. Already begun? The class was not designated to start for another 15 minutes. Were my classmates told something that I was not told? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. Anyway, it didn't matter. I would simply arrive 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. And earlier, every morning if I needed to. I would not miss a single word of Weber's lectures. I looked at the seat. It was far away from the door. Out of habit, I calculated the number of steps it's going to take me to cross the room. I have to walk from the door to the seat with my limp. For a moment, I was embarrassed, but then I said, I have to go. Clomp and drag, clomp and drag. I dragged my feet over and over 18 times until I reached my chair. Here I am, gentlemen. This is me. Get over it. I realized the classroom was completely silent. They were waiting for me to settle and perhaps embarrassed by my limp, or by my sex, or both. They all kept their eyes averted, all except one. To my right, a young man with an unruly mop of dark brown curls stared at me. I met his gaze. But even when I looked at him head-on, challenging him to mock me and my efforts, his eyes did not look away. Instead, they crinkled at the corners as he smiled towards me. a grin of great bemusement, even admiration. Who does he think he is? I thought. I had no time to make sense of him as I sat down, reached into my bag, withdrew my paper, ink and pen, and readied for the lecture. I looked straight ahead at the instructor, but the classmate was still looking at me. Weber, however, the professor, was not so single-minded. He said, I will have the attention of the entire classroom. This is your first and final warning, Mr. Einstein. So that is the first meeting between Mileva and Einstein in their classroom. So Mileva settles down in her class and she focuses on her studies. Although she is very hesitant about speaking up in the class, she always had a low self-esteem because of the fact that she is the only woman in the class, and second, because of her disability. So one day in the library, she was studying. Because of her increased thirst to learn more of physics, she was studying outside of the curriculum. She was able to read papers published all around the world and understand what they mean even beyond what was given in the curriculum. So one day in the library, when she is reading, Einstein stops by. Miss Marique, may I intrude in your thoughts? He says, yes, Mr. Einstein. I'm hoping you can help me with the problem. Me, she asks. I asked without thinking and then told myself I have to act confident. Yes, you, Miss Marique, I think you are quite the smartest in our class, by far the best in math. Can you help me with this problem? Certainly, I answered. I was flattered by his assurances, but I was still wary. Let me see. I looked down at his papers. He had passed me a nearly incomprehensible mess. Was this the kind of unorganized work that my fellow students were doing? I looked at it carefully and I said, here, Mr. Einstein, if you switch these two numbers, I believe you will arrive at a proper solution. Oh, thank you for your assistance, Miss Marique, he says. And then he looks at the paper I'm reading. Are you reading Leonard? This is not part of our curriculum. Yes, this is not part of our curriculum. I'm quite amazed. Why is that, Mr. Einstein? I turned to face him square on, daring him to challenge me. Did he think I couldn't handle Leonard, a text far more complicated than our basic physics curriculum? You seem a consummate student, Miss Marique. You surprise me. Always in attendance at class, following the rules, scrupulous in your note-taking, toiling for hours in the library instead of whiling them away in cafes. And yet you are bohemian like me. I wouldn't have guessed. I did not want to continue the conversation because I did not want to get distracted. I must go, Mr. Einstein. I have to go to my hostel. She leaves. So in the following few chapters, I want to move faster so that we can finish the story. In the following few chapters, Einstein becomes a good friend to her. He comes to the hostel and plays music with her and her friends, which is a usual routine that they do after dinner. Einstein brings his violin and Mileva plays the piano and her other friends play other instruments, and they all get closer as a group of friends. And Mileva is very surprised that he respects her for her scientific intelligence, which is new to her. And she was growing up with this low self-esteem of being a woman in science, only woman in science, but to be included to the group of male scientists like Einstein and his friends was a huge boost for her morality. So her friend Helen cautions her. She cautions her about getting close to Einstein because she says that we women have to protect ourselves, especially women in science have to be careful because we have to forge a separate path for ourselves and not get distracted during our studies and not get distracted in our professional career. So I'm going to read a few conversational pieces between Helen and Mileva. This is about Helen asking Mileva about her limp. Mileva tells Helen, who also has a disability, "You don't seem to be bothered about your disability at all, Helen. Don't you ever worry about how other people perceive you?" "Why should I? I mean, it's a nuisance. Sometimes I am a little unsteady, but I might not be the quickest in the bunch. But I don't worry about how other people see me. Do you, Mileva?" "Well, in the place where I grew up, if a woman has a limp, she's not suitable for marriage." Helen stopped. "Are you joking?" "No," she said. "Well, you're not in Serbia anymore, Mileva. You're in Switzerland, the most modern country in Europe, a place that would never adhere to such ridiculous ideas. So you need to stop thinking about that. And these kind of ideas will never be tolerated here." And when Einstein keeps coming to her hostel to play music with them, Helen cautions her, "You have to be careful." And she says, "Sure, Helen, don't worry about me. I'm focused on my education. He's just my friend." And Helen says, "Focusing on our career is the most important thing. Let's make a pact. Why should we worry about marriage? What is the point of marriage these days? Maybe something we don't need anymore. That's the spirit, Mileva. What fun we will have. We will all be historians, physicists, and teachers. And by night and weekdays, we'll play our concerts and go for hikes." I imagined this life that Helen described. Is it possible? Could I really have a happy future full of meaningful work and friendships? Helen said, "Shall we make a pact for a future together?" "Of course, we'll make a pact." So this is how her first year in college went through. And Mileva was very happy throughout her first year in college because her life was exploding with new discoveries, a new place, new friends, and a lot of science. And she was getting well ahead in her courses. And she was able to overcome her fear of speaking, and she was answering questions. And her whole group of classmates were acknowledging that she is the smartest person in the class. She's the most intelligent when it comes to mathematics. No one in the classroom can beat her in mathematics. Meanwhile, I'm skipping to the next chapter. Einstein is a constant presence in her life during the first whole year. Despite her friends warning her, she seems to be attracted to Einstein and his affections because she has never thought that anyone could show any interest in her because of her limp. She never even imagined someone can even respect her for her intelligence or for her looks. So when Einstein showed kindness to her, she was totally surprised, and she could not get over the feeling of appreciation for that. So this was the year 1897. Almost a year has passed, and their first year comes to an end. Now they are looking at a summer vacation after the first year when Einstein takes her out on a hike, and then he says that he has fallen in love with her and he wants to marry her and live a life of science together. So when he says that, although Mileva is very happy to hear that, she is very cautious again. And she says, "Please do not take offense, Mr. Einstein. I cannot proceed with this any further. I may share your beliefs and your sense that we are very different from other people, and then we can have a life of science and love together, but I cannot accept that. I have to push my own feelings aside for the sake of my professional goals. I cannot afford to get distracted. And Einstein tells her, never before have I been so certain of someone or something as I am of you. I will wait, Miss Marie, until you are ready. So that summer vacation, she goes to her hometown and she tells her dad about Einstein, which totally shocks her dad. He was not expecting this. He actually tears up and he says, my poor Mileva, why must your road be so hard? I could not understand my father's reaction. Why is this perplexing him? Why is he reacting this way? Are you mad at me, Papa? He asks. No, I'm not mad. I wish more than anything in the world that your path was an easy one, that you could have everything your heart desires. But brilliance brings burdens, doesn't it? He says. And then he advises her not to go back to the university right away. Do you think it is prudent to return to the college next term where Mr. Einstein exerts so powerful a presence? Perhaps a term away in another university might give you a perspective. Do you want to do one semester outside in Germany? He asks. Now, here is a choice that Mileva faces. This book is full of choices that Mileva makes. We all make choices in our life. Every day we make choices. Some of them are very small choices. Some of them are big choices that we make. This book is all about choices that Mileva makes and how her life keeps changing according to the choices. This is one of the first choices she makes. Her father says, don't go back to the university. Do a semester away from Mr. Einstein. And she thinks, what path should I take? And she chooses to go away to Germany, which has a consequence later. So she writes to Einstein. She says, I'm not coming back, at least for one semester. And she goes to Germany, where she does a small course in physics. And she gets a letter from Helen, which says, I thought the university where you are doing the course right now will not allow women to matriculate. Why are you wasting your time there? When you come back, it's going to be harder for you to catch up with your courses here. Won't this decision to go away to Germany put you behind by a term? I was perplexed by this letter. I was worried, will I be able to catch up when I go back? And when the semester ends in Germany, she goes back to Zurich. So I want to stop here and I want to tell one thing. This book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, I just finished part 1. We'll go to part 2 and part 3. The author gives the Newton's law of motion in each part. There are 3 laws of motion, Newton's law of motion. Many of us might know that. The first one is, the first chapter's title is that every body preserves in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a right line, unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed thereon. So the first part is where Mileva stays in a straight line in what she wants to do, and she does not change course. By the time part 2 comes, the external forces make her change course. So when she comes back to Zurich in Switzerland from Germany, she has so much work to catch up, and she's very worried about that. And she doubts herself. Why did I go? Why was I afraid to go away so far? And now I'm back here and I have to do all this work. 1 week after that, in the library, Einstein comes to her with a big bag. He typically carried, I'm going to read now. He typically carried only 1 notebook, but now he has a big bag. He gives it to her and he says, everything you need to catch up on your studies can be found in these notebooks. They contain notes of all the lectures that I copied for you. They have equations and formulas and all the theories. I thought that it will be useful for you. I felt sick as I flipped through the notebooks. I had tried to keep up while I was in Germany, but did I really miss this much? How can I possibly catch up? Looking at me, Mr. Einstein said, "Don't worry, Miss Murray, you'll be fine. I will help you." "Thank you, Mr. Einstein. You've been extremely generous and kind to me," I said. "Let's get back to work," he said, "and I will always wait for you if you ever change your mind." Then she realizes that Einstein still has not changed his mind, and she was actually becoming a little bit more, she basically was falling in love with him. So now one more year has passed. The second year has passed, and Mileva is still finding it hard to catch up. And one important event happens during this year, which is her friend Helen, who made a pact with her to stay single and never marry and go in the path of the profession, broke the pact. Her family sends in a person to meet her, kind of an alliance, which we call in India. And Helen decides to get married. And she comes and talks to Mileva about this. She apologizes to Mileva for breaking the pact. And she says that, "I'm sorry we had a pact, but will you give me permission to see this, where this takes me? Because I really like this man." And Mileva says, "Well, Helen, you have to do what you have to do. It's okay. Go and live happily." "Thank you for understanding," she says. When I walked back into the hostel, Mileva says, "The hostel appeared exactly the same as always, but also different. Helen broke the pact. She's going to get married. The other two friends are moving on, and I felt alone." This is an important event in her life because she thought that, who am I waiting for? Why am I waiting without committing to Einstein? So next, the following year, that's the third year of their college, Helen is still, Mileva is still one semester behind Einstein, and he is almost finishing up his dissertation to pass. So one of those days when Einstein is helping her with her work, and they both are sitting alone in the hostel and working on their physics papers, now that all her friends are not with them, Mileva talks to Einstein and commits to him. He asks, "Truly, are you sure?" And she says, "Yes, I am sure." And this makes Einstein very happy. And he says, "We are going to have a life of science and love. We are going to be equals, and we are going to change the world." This year, so I have to stop here and talk a little bit about Einstein. Albert Einstein was known to be a rule breaker. He was not the one to follow what was presented in front of him. He did not appreciate the lectures given by his professor because his professor only was teaching old theories. The 1900s was a period of tremendous improvement in physics and math. Every year there was new discoveries being made. And Einstein was interested in the progressive theories while his professors were still stuck on the older theories. So sometimes he refused to go to class. He was just being absent, and he asked Mileva to take notes for him. And the professor would even, they both were lab partners. So the professor would ask her where Einstein is, and she was making excuses for him. And she would take all the notes for him and bring it to him. And one such day, they are having a conversation. I'm going to read that. He calls her Dolly by now. How did it go with the Professor Weber, Dolly? Usually I loved the way my nickname sounded with his accent. Today, the very word whirly did not sound good. Not so well, Albert. Weber only agreed to admit you back into the class tomorrow if I would stake my reputation on it. So I did. Albert said, I've asked too much of you, Dolly. I'm so sorry. Really, Albert, one of us must receive a degree soon. I am already one semester behind. Neither one of us will be fit to teach physics if you fail because you abandoned class, and if I fail because I promised you would attend. She is getting worried about their future. He says, I'm sorry, Mileva, I've asked too much of you, and you have always been so good to me. But I promise never to ask anything from you again. Whenever he apologized, I felt an urge to forgive him. So I forgive him. That fall, Einstein introduces her to his family. And immediately she understands that Einstein's family does not approve of her. One of the reasons is she is from Serbia, which is looked down by the people from Germany. So immediately she understands that their family does not approve her. And her mother, Albert Einstein's mother, tells her, I understand you are as intellectual as my Albert. Is that true? This was no compliment, and I did not know how to respond. Finally, I said, if you mean that I'm serious about my studies, yes, ma'am, that is indeed true. And Albert said, Mama, Miss Marie keeps me on my track. I was very afraid that his family is not going to approve of me. Now they come to the final year, they are going to graduate. She is still behind in her one semester, while Albert has already finished his exam. I was one step behind Albert always. He could move forward, look for work, or research more deeply the subjects we worked on together, while I needed to take my final exams next July when they were offered. To make the extra time worthwhile, I had decided that I would spend the upcoming year not only studying for my exams, but also working on my dissertation with Professor Weber. She decides to work harder and stay back while Einstein goes looking for a job. Meanwhile, her father is quite upset with the way Einstein has been making her wait and wait. He asks his intention to his daughter. This is a conversation between Mileva and her father. I saw that you had a letter from your Mr. Einstein today, he said. Yes, Papa, I said. Is he busy securing work? His search will begin in the fall after he graduates. For now, he is on vacation. Vacation? Why the wait, Mileva? A man who wants to marry must have employment. I was worried. This was to be the direction of this conversation. I could understand Papa's concern. I would have been shocked if he felt otherwise. Mr. Einstein believes that the opportunities will be more plentiful this fall, Papa. I have to be just patient. Is he going to keep you waiting then? I worried about what Papa said. Was he right? Was Albert keeping me at bay while he pursued life at his own pace? I had always placed faith in Albert to lead us through the Bohemian wilderness. I knew he wanted me to be strong and independent, and it always seemed so weak it always seemed so weak and dependent to beg for a commitment. It's not waiting, Papa. We have to work on our own schedule. Okay, as long as you both have discussed future plans. Yes, Papa, I said. This is 1901 in Switzerland. The next chapter begins. Albert has already finished his exam. He has passed. He has done his dissertation, and he is looking for jobs, which is difficult to come by because he did not get good recommendations from his professors as he was missing lots and lots of classes. This worries Mileva a lot, whether he will be able to find job. At the right time, their friend Mr. Grossman says, I have a temporary 6 months job for you in the city of Bern, which is a little bit far away from Zurich. And Albert takes the job and he moves to Bern while Mileva stays back and tries to finish her the one semester that she is behind. So before going to Bern to take the job, a very important event happens in their life. This is again a choice that she makes. Einstein invites her to go away for a weekend of vacation to a lake house. She asks permission from her father, and her father says, no, this is not going to bear well. You cannot go away with a man before getting married. This is wrong. But Mileva doesn't want to say no to Einstein. She's confused. Should I go or not go? She writes 2 letters to Albert Einstein and she keeps in front of her. One says, no, I'm not going to go with you. The other one has an itinerary to go. Here is a passage from the book. I read the 2 letters for the 100th time. In the first, I refused Albert's invitation to the lake house, hinting at objections from home. Should I send this letter and deny myself the pleasure to which I had been looking forward? What would happen to our relationship if I did not go? What would happen if I refused to go with Albert? I read the other. Dutifully, I laid out my travel details and sketched out a rough itinerary. I couldn't help but smile at the professions of love that spilled out from its pages. I was thinking again and again, this was a choice in front of me that I had to make. I felt utterly alone. My family was furious with me for going away with him. My friends had moved on. Even Albert's future was unsure. Now I have to make this decision. I grabbed one of the letters from my desk. I quickly sealed it in the envelope and mailed it. So she had a choice to either take that vacation with Einstein or not. She was supposed to focus on her study, stay back, and let him look for a job. If she refused to go with him, Albert might have broken off the relationship. It could have happened, but she made a choice to go with him. They spend a week in the lake house and they come back and she sits with Mr. Weber to finish her dissertation. I'm going to read another passage. I forgot one thing. While they were in the lake house, they are having a very good time in the lake house. He stops one day and he says, Mileva, I think I will give this new Professor Weber our paper. Which one? I asked from deep within the curve of his neck. The one on molecular attraction between atoms, he said. The conclusions drawn from the phenomena of capillarity, I sat up. We had researched and written this paper theorizing that each atom related to a molecular attraction field that is separate from the temperature and the way in which the atom is chemically bound. Most of this work was mine. Yes, that's the paper. We had finalized the paper last month. Okay, won't the professor ask who the other author is? Albert was quiet. He said, "Would you mind if I listed only my name as the author? Because you have not still finished college, you don't have the degree." I did not answer. This made me sad. I looked at him and I trusted him and I said, "It's okay this one time. You can leave out my name and submit the paper." So this was the beginning of the many times that her work was used by Albert Einstein without her name. So when she came back from the lake house and she was working with the professor, furiously studying, trying to finish all her work so that she can get her degree, she fell sick one day. I'm going to read that passage right now. "Yes, Professor Weber," I uttered what seemed like a thousandth time. "Yes, Professor Weber of the afternoon." I could not help but think that my return to Switzerland felt like a descent of angels to the earth. I felt sick. And Mr. Weber was saying, "Your research is otherwise good, but a lot of your calculations are not accurate. You have to work day and night to make this correct." "Yes, Professor Weber," I answered again, weakly, almost welling up with tears. Why was I getting so emotional in his presence? My vulnerability surprised me. Now let's turn the attention to page 16, Miss Mileva, where I noticed some calculation mistakes. "Come on, let's work on this," he said. I suddenly felt violently ill. Without even excusing myself, I raced from the room to the sole bathroom in the building 2 floors up. Unsure whether I would make it in time, I swung the door open and I kneeled before the basin and I started vomiting. When the retching finally ended, I sat back on my haunches. What has happened to me? Did I eat something that didn't suit me? Then something had occurred to me and made some calculations. It was the very early days, but then I realized I was pregnant. Now, this was the beginning of huge change in Mileva's life. A little girl from Serbia who had worked all her life to become a scientist, a physicist, and a mathematician. She had worked hard in her school where she was mocked for her disability, but she graduated from high honors from high school. And she petitioned and got a special admission to the premier university in Switzerland, which was not done by any woman during those times. And she got into that university and she made some choices which ended her in this day when she found out that she still has to finish her dissertation to graduate and a final exam to take, but she is pregnant. Extremely confused by her situation, she writes to Einstein and asks him to come from his temporary job in Bern. Now, Einstein is very excited to start the life with her as a scientific couple. He keeps saying that they are going to change the world with the theories that they are coming up with him being very good in physics and her mathematical intelligence, they are going to change the world. And he's very excited to start the life. So he comes with, after seeing her letter, and they are sitting in a cafe where she wants to share the news. Was this the right moment to bring up the news? Stuttering a bit, I lost my courage and instead asked him about something that had nagged me. "Did you share our paper with Professor Weber?" I said. I emphasized the word our. I wanted Albert to remember that I had given permission to remove my name from the authorship, but for this purpose only. Yes, yes, he said. He was very interested, but he hasn't made a decision. Then I told him, "I have news, Albert." "What is it?" I sat close to him and I said, "I am with child, Albert. I am pregnant." Like a threatened snake, he recoiled from me. moving to the farthest recess of his chair. Are you certain? I am, I said. He did not speak for the next few minutes. And then instead of reaching to my hand, he reached into his jacket for his pipe. Whatever shall we do? How are we going to handle this? I was surprised at his reaction. After a few minutes, he says, I'm not certain how we are going to manage that exactly, but I want you to be happy and I will work out a solution, Dolly. You just have to wait. Wait? How long can I wait? I am not certain. I have an abundance of time, Johnny, I said, because the baby is coming in January. January, we have enough time. Don't worry. I will somehow find a permanent job by then and we will get married. Did he not understand that I cannot wait until January? If there was any hope for me to work after I passed my exam in July, I needed to get married right now. No illegitimate pregnancy could change my name. My personal reputation would not survive it, and I would have no hope of forging a professional career. All these years of hard work and my papa's support to create a life of science would dissipate in an instant. Even if we did marry immediately and a baby was born in seemingly proper course, I would face intense criticism and resistance if I chose to pursue my profession while being a mother. I wanted to scream. Couldn't Albert see that my world was shattering in front of me? I felt nauseated, and it was not from the baby. But Albert seemed to not understand the urgency. Dolly, all these things we want, a job, a marriage, a home, we will all get this in future, I promise. But you have to wait. And then he changed the subject. I had a free morning this week and I read the annals of physics in detail. Can you believe that I found this interesting paper on electron theory? I was shocked. How could he think that at a moment like this, I wanted to hear physics and about papers? I already see that my priorities were shifting. Understanding Einstein's reluctance to participate and help her through this pregnancy, she moves to her parents' home. When she goes to her parents' home, she shares the news with her father, who had worked all his life to make her the first woman physics professor in the country. So when she shares the news to him, the father cries. And this is the first time she sees the father crying. And he is disappointed and dejected and worried for her future because she is going to have an illegitimate child. In those days, in the 1900s Europe, women cannot be divorced. Women cannot be having children out of wedlock. They were pushed to the margins of the society. So his parents were extremely worried. Mileva's parents were extremely worried about her future.
Madam, just a time check. We have already taken 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Okay, I'm going to move
Yeah.
faster now. Thanks for that, because I needed that. Thank you so much. Yeah,
thank you.
So she continues to live with her parents until she delivers the baby in their house. Her mother takes her to a separate house in a different town to keep her as a secret. So the baby is delivered there. And Mileva's delivery of the baby is a very traumatic one. She almost dies during the delivery without health care, and she comes out of it after a few days. She has a girl baby. She names the baby Liesel. And when she sees her daughter, she almost comes back alive. Her priorities change completely, and she has one sole focus of making life better for her daughter. So she receives letters from Einstein from Switzerland asking her to come back so that they can continue to work on physics. And he is not still ready to raise the baby because he's not married to her. So he says, come without the baby, let's figure out what to do. And at this point, she has a choice. She can either go or stay with her parents or go back to college and get her degree. When she's thinking which path should I take, again, another choice, her mother comes and tells her, the most important thing for you right now is to be married. You have a daughter, you have to raise that child with a father and a mother. The most important thing for you to do is get married. I will take care of the child. You go to Switzerland and get married and find a home, and then you can take the baby from here. She listens to her mom, makes a choice, and goes back to Switzerland, where she meets Albert Einstein and they get married. And they find a home, and she becomes a housewife like her mother. All the things that her father tried to protect her from, shield her from, her father never allowed her to do housework. He always said, you are a scientist, you are going to college, you are going to university. And he used to tell her mother, don't teach her housework. She is going to college. She's going to be a professor. All those work that she never learned, now she was doing with Albert in her house. She was preparing to bring Liesel, her daughter, back home, back with them, when she received a letter from home that an epidemic, just like COVID, an epidemic has started in the hometown where the baby was. That was scarlet fever. And her child was extremely sick and might not make it. She cries to Albert, I have to go see the baby, and she leaves the town and rushes back to her parents' place, which Albert Einstein does not understand. He says that, why are you rushing back? If you leave me and go, how will I take care of myself? I will be alone. Mileva doesn't understand how he can be so insensitive towards her feelings of her child. She goes back to her parents' house, finds the child extremely sick, who cannot survive. She stays with the child for 1 week and the baby dies. She buries the baby there and comes back to Bern. When she comes back to Einstein's house, the first thing he says is that, don't worry about the house. Now that you are here, we can straighten it up. I try to be as clean as possible. That's all he could say, which shocks her. The callousness that he has towards the loss she has experienced shocks her. Now she has a choice again. Now she does not have a child. She is married. She could leave, go back to the university. She sits and thinks, what should I choose? A life here or a separate life where I can go and pursue my education again? And then she chooses a life here. Because I have worked with Albert so long, and the scientific partnership I have with him is so strong, I cannot leave this. So she chooses to stay with him. On the way back from her home after burying her child, she's standing in the train station. When she is looking at the motion of the train and the clock, I'm not going to go into the detail of that, and she deeply thinks about the motion and the velocity and the time. And she basically comes up with the idea of the theory of relativity. It just pops in her mind. She understands completely the theory of relativity. And when she comes back home, she shares it with Albert. She explains to him, and he is spellbound. He is amazed by the intensity of the truth which lies in that equation. And he's like, we have got it. Let's write a paper on this. The next 1 year, they work on writing this paper. This is one of the 1 year which Mileva is to some extent happy, because whenever they are working on a scientific project, that's when they connect. That's when she feels the total love between them. And they sit down and they work on this paper together, which is, let me find the name of that. Yes, it is an article on Brownian motion and atomic theory, which was co-authored by both of them. And they are just days away from submitting this to the Annals of the Physics, which is the premier magazine in Europe those days. Please take the final look at my calculations on the velocity of light and empty space. I said, Dolly, you are the mathematicians in the family. Your calculations are always correct. I am so happy we finished this paper and we'll submit it next week. This is the time that I have been happiest after the loss of my child, working on this science paper. They submit the paper and they wait for answer from Annals of Physics for a long time. September 26, 1905, she receives a mail. I'm going to read this passage because this is important. The cover of the Annals of Physics peeked out from the envelope. I pulled it from the tangle. Flipping through the table of contents, I saw the listing for our paper on the electrodynamics of moving bodies. The author's name was Albert Einstein, and my name was not there. How come? Where is my name? I thumbed through the volume. I looked at every page. On the electrodynamics of moving bodies, where was my name? I carefully processed each word of the article, but my name was nowhere to be seen. Mileva Marik Einstein did not appear in the footnote even. Underneath the title was only one name, Albert Einstein. How had this happened? Why would the editor have removed my name without consulting us? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I don't have a degree yet? I sank to my knees and I waited for Albert to come home. When he came home, I said, Albert, the article on relativity was published today. What a momentous occasion. But you'll never believe what happened. It lists only your name. How can the editors do this mistake? Albert says, be quiet, Mileva. You're going to wake up the child. They have already had a second son by now. You knew, I whispered, backing away from him. Listen, Dolly, this is not what you think. Is this why you were so late tonight? You were reluctant to come home. You knew I will be upset because what the journal has done. Listen, please. One of the editors wrote to me asking questions about you and your credentials. I explained to them that you still don't have a degree, and he was hesitating. Did he ask you to remove my name? No, he said. So you asked him to remove my name? Yes, he said. What does it matter, Dolly? We are both one, aren't we? Wrenching my arms out of his hands, I said, Albert, we may be one, but we have two hearts right now. This was a moment in Mileva's life where she realized that she is losing all her scientific credentials to him. Because she missed out on getting the college education and the degree, she was losing all her credit that she was due. Most of the paper that was written by Einstein before the year 1914 was done with her help. And because she was the mathematician and no one can beat her in the capacity to do complicated math calculations, and he was good in physics. All the papers that they published was grounded on the math calculations that she did. But none of the papers had her name because Einstein submitted everything without her name. So every time she finds it, she has a fight with him and then she forgives him. Somehow he apologizes And every time she gets a choice to leave him and go and pursue her own career, she forgives him again and again. Meanwhile, they have the first son and a second son. I'm moving faster here. And after the theory of relativity article is published, Einstein becomes world famous. There is invitations from all the universities all over the world for him to come and give lectures, write more papers. He gets more and more awards, and literally everybody in the world now knows his name. When this happens, one day she finds a letter in the pile of congratulatory letters that keeps coming to him. It is from a woman named Anna. And this letter references a time Einstein had the previous year when he went for a conference. It indicates that Einstein had had an affair with this girl, Anna. Mileva is heartbroken. She confronts him and she says, I'm going to write a letter to this Anna's husband, letting her know that she's still communicating with you. And Einstein again apologizes. He apologizes heavily and he says, sorry, and this was like a momentary discretion, and I broke it off with her. And whenever he apologizes, she forgives him. Whenever he says that he is going to correct his ways and they are going to have a very good scientific partnership and they're going to change the world, she forgives him. This is one of the time, again, she had a choice and she chooses to move on. So by now, because he is so famous, he gets a job in Berlin as a professor of a very renowned university, and he is already nominated for a Nobel Prize. He has not won the Nobel Prize, but he is nominated for a Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, the relationship between Einstein and Mileva is deteriorating day by day because he is not including her in all the professional conferences where he meets all the other scientists. He does not introduce her as his equal. He introduces her as his wife and expects her to stay behind. He even instructs her to walk one step behind him when he is on his conference visits to other states. Despite all of this, she decides to stay with him, and then they move to Germany. This was their final stop before everything falls apart. When she goes to Germany, she finds out there is a girl called Elsa who lives in Germany, who is a childhood friend of Einstein, who he has been communicating with continuously, and with whom he has had an affair before, and he is continuing to meet her now when they are in Berlin. He leaves their house, goes to meet her, and comes back home. This is when Mileva decides, can I continue my life with Einstein like this? He confronts him about Elsa. And at this time, Albert Einstein says, the person who drove me to Elsa's hands is you, Mileva. You, with your dark moods and sadness about Liesel, about your daughter all the time. I cannot take this anymore. You are the one who drove me into Elsa's hands. Hearing this, Mileva is almost deciding to leave him when one final invitation comes to her from the person who is her idol, which is Marie Curie. Now that Einstein is world famous, He has made friendship with a lot of famous scientists, and one of them is Madame Curie, who we all know. Madame Curie invites them to Paris, to their house for a vacation, and she goes to see them where Madame Curie questions her. I have heard so much about you, Mileva. You are a brilliant scientist. Why would you stop your studies? Why have I not seen your name in any of the papers that was published by Einstein? And Mileva says, well, the children keep me busy, and that's the reason why I could not do it. And then Mary Curie talks to her and says, listen, you and I are the same. We are women in science, and we have struggled so hard to come to our university level of education. The only difference between you and me is the choice of our husband and the choices we made whenever we felt adversity in life. This shakes up Mileva. Did I hear this from the greatest scientist in the world? Is she asking me to make the hard decision of leaving Albert? She goes back home and finds that Albert has left the house for an extended period of time. He comes back after about 2 weeks from Elsa's house. Now, this is a time for Mileva to make a decision. And she says, finally, after all of this, I cannot stay with you, Albert. I have to go. He takes the 2 children and leaves for Switzerland to the old college where she joined and takes up a teaching position, a tutoring position for girls, and lives out her rest of her life there. The epilogue that she writes is, I'm finishing faster here. I want to read this letter she writes towards the end. Every body continues at rest in motion in a straight line unless compelled to change by forces from outside. I find this first law of motion beautiful and profound, an elegant statement of one of God's truths uncovered by man. In my youth, I perceived the tenet as applying solely to objects. This was my childhood path, a straight path, a mathematician, a scientist, a loner. But I was faced with an outside force, that was Albert. Albert's force acted on me in accordance with the second law of motion. It swept me up from my direction and changed my path. I took on roles of his lover, the mother of his children, his wife, and his secret scientific partner. I allowed him to trim away all the parts that didn't fit his mold. I expanded others to further his dreams for himself. I suffered silently when my desires did not match his, like the sacrifice of my professional ambitions for his stellar rise, like the surrender of my ability to keep my baby by my side. Until I could stand Albert's force no more. Then the third law of motion triggered. I exerted a force in the opposite direction. I left him. Since then, I have stayed still, defying all the laws of the motion. I have watched the war come to Europe once and then twice, and during those times, I stayed with the help of my best friend, Helen. Even when I had the Nobel Prize money Albert had promised me in our divorce to assist in the raising of my beautiful sons, I have reclaimed my intellect and my scientific passion by tutoring promising young female scientists. When Mileva and Albert Einstein got divorced in the year 1919, the agreement made between them offered the custody of their children to her, and Helen, for the first time, placed a demand. She never demanded anything from Albert Einstein. This was the first time she demanded, and that was, you have already been nominated for Nobel Prize 4 times. You are going to win the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize comes with a huge money award. When you win the Nobel Prize, you have to give that money to me because I am the rightful owner for that. And I have to raise your 2 children. And Albert, without any opposition, signs the agreement. And true to it, in 1921, he won the Nobel Prize and he put all the money in a trust for his children. And Mileva lived off of the interest that she earned off the trust. That was the only credit she got for her work, which she summoned her courage to ask him in the last day when she left him. So when she left him and went to Zurich and continued to live there, she lived until her age 72. She became a tutor for promising young female scientists. She wrote in her letter that I have reclaimed my intellect and my scientific passion by tutoring promising young female scientists, the sort of girls that my baby girl might have been if she had lived, the sort of young, promising scientific girl that I once was. Perhaps these girls will find their courage and study and excel and understand the God's patterns in science. And one day, perhaps, these girls will tell my story. So with that, I will end with that sentence because today I am telling you all her story. And I am a girl of science. I studied science. I'm a doctor. And it's fitting and it is a privilege that I got to tell her story to all of you today. I went very fast towards the end. I don't know if I was able to capture the essence of the story, but that is the end. And I can open for questions now.
Yeah. Thanks, madam. It was really nice and seems like a heart-touching story. The name also, I think it should be like the other side of Einstein.
Yes.
The other.
Yes.
Okay, you explained very well. It's kind of a new type of review we have seen today. So you have taken us through the book, and you have read out the important phrases, right? So that is very interesting. And you have created a large interest to read the book completely. It seems like
Yes.
it's a big, how many pages it is?
The book is 284 pages. 284 pages. I went through it very fast. It is written very beautifully. So I will urge everyone to read the book to get the whole grasp of the story.
Yeah. It was like hearing some lecture about some very nice. Thank you. Then with this one, let us move to our discussion. Yes, madam.
Is there any questions anybody would like to ask? Or
okay. So we are in the 65th book
I can't hear you well.
Ilamaran, you are having some audio issue, Ilamaran.
I cannot hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Is it okay now?
No.
Hello?
No, Ilamaran.
Okay.
Okay,
let
sounds
me
okay.
But,
yeah. Okay, let's go. Okay, மட்டும் கேக்குது.
How is it now? How is it?
Yeah, it is good now. Go for it.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for the interruption. Sorry.
Can I share one picture?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I just want to share one picture.
Yeah. So after seeing that picture, we can move to the discussion session. So those who have questions to discuss or to reflect on the review, please raise your hand and wait for your turn. Okay. We'll quickly move on that after seeing the picture. Yeah. Yes, madam, we are seeing. Hello?
Yeah. So this is the photograph of Mileva.
Okay.
Just wanted to share this with the group.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So with this, let us move to our discussion session. So Kale, you are raised the hand, right? So we can start with Kale, and then D Block Library students.
Yeah.
book பண்ணிட்டேன்டா.
Go for D block first, ma. I can go
Okay.
next.
Yeah.
நான் நல்ல புக் ரிவ்யூல இருக்கேன். அதோட
Yeah, Manikanda Prabhana, you can go on mute. I muted you.
ஹலோ
Oh. Sorry. Yeah, so those are raised from D Block Library Hall, right? So you can unmute and speak.
ஹலோ தேங்க்யூ வெரி மச். நான் எனக்கு வந்து ஒரே ஒரு ஃபீலிங் வந்து
Yeah, sorry. D Block girls, it's your turn. So you can unmute and raise your questions. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please ask.
By hearing this review, lots and lots of thoughts were keep on running in our mind. So we were going to share our thoughts that where we get through this review. The quote that first strikes in our mind is that ma'am had already insisted that the life of the author is fully beyond the choice that she had chosen it. So the first quote that strikes our mind is, first we make the choice, then the choice we have made, they make us. It's I think so that it is the moral that we get from this book review. And the next, those points that were most attracted us to, success is only the will to prepare. In the journey of life, there are a lot of ways to pursue, which depends on the stages that we are. The will that we have to reach the goal that we desire and keep working on it is very important. Lots of distraction will strike us by, but we need to stubborn in our desire. A huge ups and downs may strike us, but all is beyond our mindset. These were the thoughts that were strike to our mind by hearing this book review. And thank you for the opportunity.
That was fantastic, actually. What he said, the choice we make, those choices make us. That was fantastic. I really like that, because this Mileva's life was full of choices she made, which was holding her back. And the first choice that she made, which was wrong, was not being careful enough. Until she finished graduation, she didn't go back to get her degree. She kept forgiving someone who took advantage of her. So the choice she made her life. Thanks for that. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good reflection from D Block. Maybe you can give your name and give a short intro about you, just briefly. So, hello. Okay, waiting for till we wait now. We'll move to Kale. Kale, you can ask.
Ilamaran, MKP.
MKP. But I'm not seeing that he is raising his hand. That is, I think he left Kale.
No problem. He had a question, actually. He was going to ask a question. Anyway, no problem. That's fine. Really, this morning I was total tired. Initial, I just had like very, shallow hearing of like what is happening. But then once I heard the first paper, he asked like, because you don't have a degree, and then you are going to, he's going to put only his name. That woke me up. And I really woke up. And I know in life, if she woke up on that minute, the whole story of Einstein would have been just Mileva. It would not have been Einstein. And I also felt like when she buried the baby, I felt like she buried her scientific life. I meaning like being a scientist life also she buried right there. So it is very emotional, but making it just, that's how the men were. So there is not much I can like blame him on how the world was. And I know there was an example right there. Mary Curie was there. She had a better life. Oh, I understand, but there was many of them were like that only. So it's like hard to, I mean, as you said, it's not Einstein's issue. It's Maleva's choices. That's how everybody is blaming. That's how they are going to blame. They're never going to accept that it's the, patriarchy or how this man does. Nobody is going to accept. They are, even we ourselves sometimes say like, oh yeah, if she did it, she would have been better. That's how our minds are trained. But definitely it's not her fault. When somebody is doing it with the love, that doesn't mean you have to take advantage of it. That is happening even now, today happens. So it's hard to educate anyone unless we are awake and we do our choices, right? So that's very good way of doing the review. I felt extraordinary because of the passages you read in between, especially the letter she wrote with the connecting all the theories of her life. One more thing I felt is like, yeah, sometimes pain is the one giving you the path for achieving things. I don't know if is it true that if he took care of her nicely, she would not have figured out all this. Maybe not true. She would have definitely, because always she was brilliant and doing right choices. So it's like people give that kind of excuse, right? They say like, oh, because she was suffering, she was able to do more. And not really. She would have been done even more if she has given
Yeah.
choice. So very happy to hear from you, Nirmala. You were like amazing reviewer. I can say like time took longer time than you wanted, but it was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You made a very good point about Mary Curie there, because her husband, Pierre Curie, was very supportive of her. Mary Curie, Pierre Curie, and Albert Einstein, Mileva Einstein, they all lived in the same period. Mary Curie won her Nobel Prize. And her husband, when she was nominated for the Nobel Prize, there were people opposing a woman being nominated. And Pierre Curie, her husband, was the most aggressive lobbyist against that opposition. So he was the one who lobbied for her name to be included, and she won the Nobel Prize. So we can see how both these women scientists' life was different based on the husbands that happened to be they got married to.
Yeah. Thanks, madam.
But one
Next
thing we
year.
can say today is that it is Mileva who made the theories. We can declare today the Nobel Prize and all that prize makes nothing. Right now, it's like we say like it's not Einstein did everything. It's Mileva did it.
Yeah.
At least to satisfy our souls, to say like it's her, all that achievements. Yeah.
Thanks, Kay, for sharing your comments. So those who have any questions or reflections, please raise your hand. கேள்விகளை அல்ல கருத்துக்களை தமிழிலும் பகிரலாம். கேள்விகளும் கருத்துக்களும் உள்ளோர் கையை விரித்து விட்டு காத்திருக்கலாம். Any more questions or comments? I can see some new faces. Yeah. Velmani bro, yes.
இளமர் தேங்க்ஸ் நிர்மலா. ஒரு அருமையான ஒரு கதையை காலையில் சொன்னீங்க. ஐ நீ வாண்டட் டு கீப் இட் ஷார்ட், பட் அந்த கலை உள்ளே போனோன்னே அப்படியே கண்டினியூ ஆகிட்டே இருந்தது. நாங்களும் அப்படியே உங்களோட ட்ராவல் பண்ணோம். தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் பிரிங்கிங் திஸ் அதர் சைட் ஆஃப் தி ஐன்ஸ்டைன். நீங்கள் அந்த ஃபஸ்ட்டு சொன்ன பேராகிராஃப் படிக்கும்போது 2 people கேம் டு மை மைண்ட், முத்துலட்சுமி அண்ட் சுதாமூர்த்தி. இன்னும் அந்த சேம் காலேஜுக்குள்ள வர்றது. Now it has changed, but still there are many people went through the same experience. I hope thanks for introducing this story to us. Thank you.
I also remembered.
I see Dr. Deep.
Sorry.
Yeah, another thing, I see Dr. Deepa here. She's a scientist. I can say engineer and scientist too. She has patents. Maybe we can hear her comments if she's want to share.
Yeah, Deepa, the floor is open to you. If you have any comments, you can share. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Ilamaran.
Yeah,
I
we can
audible?
hear you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving a wonderful review. It was nice. For me, it is the family support and my husband's support. All this I have achieved. Without him, nothing would have been done. I left my child at the age of 3. I was there for my ME and PhD for 8 years. They took care of my child, and he was very much supportive in all the ways. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepa.
It's important credit to be given to all the men in our lives who always support us. It's easy to brush with a broad stroke about all men, but that's not true. Like you said, you gave credit to your husband, and many of us, most of us, have to give credit. I say that I have the 3 most important men in my life are my father, my husband, and my brother. And they have steadfastly inspired me and supported me. So yes, we all cannot just call everyone the same names, but majority of us have been extremely supported by the men in our life, and we should give them credit and appreciate them.
Yeah.
And I want to add one more thing. All this information was not available until 1987, when there were some letters which were discovered by Einstein and Mileva's son, the first son who went on to become a chemical engineer. He lived in California, and their descendants are all still living in US, and they maintain the Einstein Foundation. So the son Hans found all these letters between Einstein and Mileva. And in those letters, he constantly writes about our paper and your work. He keeps mentioning that 1905 theory of relativity as your work or our work. That's when all the scientists jumped onto it and started investigating as to, how much was her contribution to this? And it's all too late, but that's when the whole information about her involvement came into light.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we are nearing the last phase of the session. Any more questions? I just forgot to share one thing. The way the author related the 3 laws of Newton, right? Newton 3 laws. That also amazing.
Yeah, the author was very smart about it. She has 3 parts in the book. The first one is there is no change straight line. She has her pathways set. Second one, the outside force, Albert Einstein, everything changes. The third, she pushes back with the opposite force on the other side.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Yeah. That's great. Just an information about the next week review. So next week review is by a student of Kingston College, a student of our Deepa madam. So it's a Kalaivani from 3rd year. She's going to review the book Pidikul Adanga Maunam. So it's a Tamil book written by Pavitrananda Kumar. So this is the second book from the same author. So we will try our best to invite author also this time. Okay. So with that note, if there is no more questions, means we can wind up the session. So thank you, madam. Thanks for your nice review.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much.
I enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really it was a good session. And thank you all who has joined and listened and participated in the discussion. So next week we'll meet again with another wonderful book. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Carly, I finished.
Kale, you can close the.
I think I finished. Did I leave? See? Can you see if I left? Yeah, I had to read very fast. I don't think I read very well. I had to move very fast.